The royal clan is, of course, also a ghost mansion. Their strength far surpassed ours. Their methods were also more numerous than ours. In a short time, they conquered the primordial continent. They cleansed and reorganized the ghost clan from within. Strictly speaking, I should now be a member of the royal clan. The ghost clan no longer exists, and now they have finished their reorganization, beginning to gather their forces. This battle tonight will be the final battle of the Eternal Night Continent. I've trapped you here for all these years. For this final battle, I won't hold you back. Go home and take a look. After this, there will be no more Janbei. The middle-aged man, expressionless, extended his right hand. Countless spiritual energy surged violently from within him, quickly condensing in his hand into a giant hammer. Standing on the hammer's handle, his right hand made a grasping motion, rolling up the two crocodiles beside him. Without leaving a single word, he shot into the clouds at incredible speed, vanishing between heaven and earth. He had to first report this news to the High Elders of the Eternal Night Hall, then return to Janbei. When he saw that scene, he knew the fate of the Eternal Night Continent was already sealed. It was different from last time. Last time, he could only watch from the sidelines. This time, he would take the field himself. He had to defend the Eternal Night Continent as best he could. After the middle-aged man left, the darkness shrouding the shadowy figure around him slowly dissipated, revealing its true form, a short, red-skinned ghost. At that moment, it stood still, gazing at the departing figure. The southern campaign was over. They had invaded the Eternal Night Continent twice, fought for hundreds of years, yet never managed to take it. He had always believed that within a few years, the Eternal Night Continent would be fully occupied by the Ghost Clan. Until their own habitat was invaded, they felt helpless for the first time. The enemy was like a regular army, conquering one continent after another with practiced efficiency. Yet this victory, this glory, had nothing to do with him. Just after the breeding and gathering season, Chen Fan stood dazedly on the city wall. Not far away, an old man was holding a little girl's hand, sitting on the stone street of the city wall with a bowl of dumplings, laughing and chatting with each other. That was Daryu and Ganyang Hospital. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but smile faintly. It had been many years since he first met Daryu. Daryu was now an old man, with only a few years left to live. Whether it was the blessing of the new continent, or the blessing of Janbei, the Night Watchers could not absorb them. The Night Watchers seemed like beings rejected by this world, but these two were open-minded, spending their days farming in Sunset City, living a lively life. This year's rainy season passed quietly. According to news from the Eternal Night Hall, not a single frontline fell during this rainy season. Yet he felt a vague unease beneath every seemingly calm sea surface. Kidding currents surge, all signs of a more violent storm to come. But now that the rainy season was over, there was another year of development ahead. Chen Fan let out a long breath, stretched, and prepared to return to Nameless Mountain to wash dishes, then get a good night's sleep. Another year had passed. He set the development plan for this year. The chief commander of the Eternal Night Westing Chuanwu Frontline 1 stood on the city wall, gazing into the darkness beyond the defense line. A cup of tea ago, he had sent a scout ship to the sea. Now, as eternal night descended, if the ghost nests in this sea had truly all retreated, news should have arrived by now. He nervously gripped the Mother Child talisman in his hand. Just then, the Mother Child talisman in his hand suddenly began to heat up. This is the Eternal Night Hall General Strategy Department. Notify the Chief Commander of Eternal Night Westing Chuanwu Frontline 1. Situation changed. Tonight is the final battle of the Eternal Night Continent. The news came a bit late, but it should still be enough for everyone to bid farewell to your families. Thank you all for your selfless dedication to Yanai Continent over these many years. It's a pity I won't see the day of victory. Let us meet in hell with regret. This is the final order issued by His Highness Yanai. Again, thank you all for your years of service. The person in charge stood frozen in place, caught off guard for a moment. The communication stone in his hand had already cut off the link. Then the communication stone in his hand transmitted another urgent and desperate message. Ghost nest, so many ghost nests this is. This is the perimeter sent to that African stronghold. Arc. Level 1 alert. In the 108-kilometer long western front of Yongnai, at the Chuanwu No. 1 front line, the patterns on the surface of each turret began to glow rapidly. Large numbers of people quickly returned to their posts, waiting anxiously. It had clearly passed the rainy season. Why would a level 1 alert suddenly be triggered? Then, he saw an almost endless sea of ghost nests, rising with the waves, both in number and intensity, far surpassing previous ghost nests. Among them, 3 peak ghost emperors glared with fierce light, charging at the very front. False emperors leading the charge. They had never seen ghost emperors initiate a charge before, and these 3 ghost emperors were clearly more ferocious. This is Frontline No. one contacting Janbei breeding ground. The person in charge looked at the scene before him. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes. He quickly repeated the news that Yanai had just told him. The next moment, boom, two ghost emperors, over a meter tall, hovered in midair, arms spread wide, heads raised, standing in the sky. Above their heads, a red light sphere condensed. The sphere kept expanding, exuding an aura of intimidation, while another ghost emperor, massive in size, standing dozens of meters tall, charged at the forefront with a giant axe in hand, his eyes filled with savage, murderous light. Withstanding the turret bombardment, he sneered and hurled the giant axe down heavily. Boom! The light sphere and the giant axe struck the same area almost simultaneously, working together with seamless coordination. With that single strike, in the western Nanak Shu and Wu No, one front line, this level 9 defense line, this stretch of wall, began to tremble and crumble. Then two more starlight, red light spheres and the giant axe struck the same spot. The wind tore a breach in this wall. Endless ghost nests, braving the turret fire, with a near-mad frenzy, began pouring in through this breach. This defense line, which had never failed before, faced its first fall, and also its last, and within the ghost nests, a short, stocky figure, wrapped in a black robe, slowly spread its arms, emitting waves of eerie green light. The light's range was vast, covering almost all the ghost nests. All the rolling nests under the light moved faster. Their eyes gleamed with even more ferocity. The originally peaceful atmosphere of Janbei instantly dissipated. Alarms rang out in every corner. Chen Fan, who had just been about to sleep, now dressed quickly with a grim expression, heading to the strategic room in the cave. Looking at the sand table on the table, he had already received Yanai's message inside the command room on the wall, and also the information sent to him. To be precise, it was news that Frontline No. 1 was about to fall. The Ghost Clan had suddenly received a powerful reinforcement, launching a total assault tonight. He had considered the Ghost Clan might launch a total assault, but he never thought it would come so suddenly, with almost no warning. After pausing to process the data, he quickly issued orders to activate defenses. Missile Reserve Base, urgently support the Western Nanak Shu and Wu No. 1 front line. Activate the Janbei temporary defense line. I will personally lead the defense line to temporarily block the breach. Logistics will be responsible for evacuating the population from other areas, all to Janbei. The others are to prepare to activate the Ember Plan at any moment. The Ember Plan was a scheme he had begun preparing long ago. Hypothetically, if the frontline situation truly deteriorated to a certain extent, then the new continent would be his final retreat. Retreat to the new continent, blast the undersea tunnel. The news from the Eternal Night Post was filled with a sense of despair, but he still didn't know the specifics. We have to fight first and see. Maybe it's not that hopeless. The next moment, at the rear mountain of Nameless Mountain, the Lun Silent Reserve Base for cruise missiles of the proliferation, those towering pillars standing neatly upon the ground, suddenly lit up one after another. The ground began to tremble violently as the first pillar ascended into the sky. More and more pillars began to rise in succession, erupting with blinding, scorching blue-white light, vanishing into the darkness. What's going on? Did he pick Ji Wu from some ancient text? Dosed Yellow 95 was enjoying his retirement life with great relish, aside from being forced to go for a morning run every day. There was nothing wrong with this life, but just now, his subordinate suddenly told him that the breeding Yellow Spring past defense line, they had suddenly entered a state of high alert, with all turrets lit up and ready to activate at any moment. What kind of play is this? Over the past year, we've gotten along quite well with Far Yu, minding our own business without interfering with each other. Why does it suddenly look like we're about to go to war? But the next moment, he suddenly saw a scorching white light appear faintly at the edge of the sky, steadily drawing closer. Before he could react, he saw more scorching white lights piercing the darkness, like a meteor shower, speeding swiftly overhead. Each of those white lights carried an incredibly terrifying aura, almost suffocating. Closer, closer, nearing rapidly. Dosed Yellow 95, lying in the courtyard, had already instinctively rolled over and huddled in a corner of the yard. The scorching white light in the sky was getting closer and closer to him. He saw it clearly. They were streaks of white light radiating a terrifying presence, trailing blue-white lightning behind them. Like the wrath of the thunder god, dozens of white lights were tearing across the night sky, heading toward the distant chicken coop. Looking out, there were dozens of them, already speeding past overhead and disappearing at the edge of the night sky. Not aimed at me. Dosed Yellow 95, pale-faced, leaped up from the courtyard. The direction from which the white lights were launched was Akshu and Wu No. 1 frontline in Western Eternal Night. Strategist. Your Majesty, I'm here. Without waiting to steady himself, he began analyzing the situation rapidly. The Kshu and Wu No. 1 frontline in Western Eternal Night is a level 9 defense line. Normally speaking, it shouldn't force the proliferation to expend ground support, unless something unexpected happens. and that variable is likely last year's rainy season. When orders came down, for you, your majesty, to sneak over and eliminate the proliferation at its source, something has gone wrong in the habitat. Those above have gained a powerful reinforcement. Where the reinforcement came from is unknown, but they deliberately chose after the rainy season, when the main frontline lets its guard down, to launch a general offensive. Tonight, the Ghost Clan might be launching a total assault. So soon, Ghost Yellow 95 face changed color. He hadn't expected the day of the total assault to come so quickly. He had originally left a batch of ghosts in the waters near the Xuan Wu No, one frontline in Western Eternal Night, but that batch had been unreachable since last year. How will this affect us? Not much of an impact. The Ghost Clan already holds the advantage. And now they've gained reinforcements. Before lying, the Eternal Night continent should fall completely. When that happens, we'll just return to the Ghost Clan. I see. Then should we start attacking the proliferation's defenses with full force now, so we'll have something to show when we return later? Absolutely not. Even if the general offensive has begun, but the Eternal Night continent is so vast, it can't fall overnight. But, if we begin a full-scale assault on the propagation defense line, those white beams from earlier wouldn't just be passing over our heads. Hearing this, Ghost Emperor 95 eyes flickered with lingering fear. He had nearly forgotten about that. He then couldn't help but let out a long sigh, gazing at the already aged ghost before him, his expression complex. After all these years, it's good to have you. Once the war is over, let's both officially retire together. When our ghost race finally has its own heavenly Dao, we will be acknowledged by this realm. We can also have our own descendants. The old ghost smiled. From the moment I opened my eyes, all I saw was you, my king. As long as I can stay by your side, anything is fine. Just then, at the edge of the night sky, dozens of white beams radiating terrifying and dreadful energy tore through the darkness once more. The ghost race sought to fully conquer the Eternal Night continent, but some were unwilling. At the Eternal Night Western Chuan Wu frontline number 1, under the combined assault of 3 ghost emperors, a breach appeared in the city wall in an instant. Nearly endless waves of ghost nests, fearless of death, charged through the turret fire and poured into the gap. They began capturing the logistics personnel behind the defense line on a massive scale. In an instant, countless fell dead or wounded. The situation was dire. But just then, the Eternal Night was at its deepest. The blazing white beam, moving at a speed too fast for the naked eye to track, came from the distant north, and when it was just a short distance from the ground, it transformed into 3 towering pillars, lining precisely at the breach. A violent explosion erupted, its deep roar echoing across heaven and earth. Countless blue-white thunder serpents began to howl endlessly, and the ghost nests at the breach were completely wiped out. The nearest ghost king, wielding a giant axe, was filled with rage, and for the first time, a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. But he only had time to curl his massive body into a ball, before it was blasted to pieces. The towering pillar had detonated almost right above his head. There was no chance of survival. Hold the line. Hold the line. The overall commander on the city wall, upon seeing this, his bloodshot eyes flashed with a shred of relief amid heart-wrenching agony. Architects near Zone 77, come repair immediately. City defense teams, do your best to clear the ghost nests that have broken through. One by one, architects rushed over, fear still in their eyes, but they did their best to calm their minds. Behind them, logistics personnel quickly carried over crates of high-grade ghost stones. As the ghost stones turned into liquid, countless walls formed from white lines rapidly reappeared at the breach. The gap was being sealed, but just then, dozens of blinding beams struck again from the horizon. Their scorching light dispelled the Eternal Night, landing on the western side of the Eternal Night, across various zones outside the Xuan Wu No. One front line. Boom! The entire ground began to shake violently, and the whole horizon was ignited. Countless crimson flames, mixed with blue-white thunder serpents, surged into the sky. The original ghost nests had turned into a sea of fire, and the screams of ghost nests rose and fell, piercingly sharp like the summons of the King of Hell. That is the source of propagation. We held it. The frontline commander instinctively held his breath, gazing beyond the defense line. The 2 smaller ghost emperors had now turned to ash as well. Without the ghost emperors to break through, the remaining ghost nests will be much easier to handle. He hurriedly picked up the sound transmission talisman in his hand, and spoke urgently. All martial kings near Zone 77, come to support immediately. This area just fell, and many ghost nests have broken through. This batch of ghost nests must be cleared as soon as possible. But in a place he could not see, hidden deep within the Eternal Night, at the center of the ghost nests, a small, thin ghost figure wrapped in a black robe, gazed at the defense line before him with eyes utterly devoid of emotion. Even as 3 ghost emperors fell in an instant, he showed little reaction. Instead, he slowly raised a wooden staff in his hand, muttering some incomprehensible incantation under his breath. The next moment, a star-red light radiated from him, quickly spreading outward in all directions, covering an area as vast as 108 kilometers. All the ghost nests in this area were completely enveloped. The speed of their spread was so fast that it nearly transformed in the blink of an eye. The new batch of ghost nests that had just emerged from the seabed and were charging forward suddenly halted in their treks. Chu's eye saw that the aura emanating from every ghost nest had surged by a trace. A fierce ferocity gleamed in Han's pupils. The ghost kings within the original ghost nests began to swell in size, growing until they stood tens of meters tall, clearly having evolved into ghost emperors. A moment later, the ghost kings in the nests began to transform into ghost emperors. One ghost emperor after another rose from the nests, looking out, making it impossible to count how many ghost kings had been born within. The false tide's charge came again, and this time it was even more unstoppable. It's over. After witnessing this scene, the frontline commander's hand loosened its grip on the transmission talisman, a trace of despair flashing in his eyes. He stood frozen in place, staring at the ghost emperors, rising from the line of defense, and let out a bitter laugh. In just his area alone, he had already spotted 4 ghost emperors. We can't hold it. Even with the support from the breeding grounds, we can't hold it. Some repairing the walls. The single-fire turrets on the defensive line began to activate, opening fire in a concentrated barrage. Though they inflicted considerable damage on the ghost kings, they couldn't kill them in a short time. He staggered to the edge of the city wall, looking down at the batch of ghost nests, as if he had already seen the image of the line falling. Just then, suddenly, a pair of thick, powerful hands reached out from behind, stabilizing his swaying form. He saw his trusted deputy, who now spoke hoarsely with a blank expression. Let me reintroduce myself, Chu Ziyu, a member of the Shadow Pavilion, acting on the Lord's orders during wartime. I am urgently authorized to take command of the Yunai Western Chuanwu Frontline Sector 1. Without further words, he simply took the transmission talisman from the commander's hand and said hoarsely, all sectors of the front line, report the current Ghost Emperor status in your area, and provide me with the specific coordinates. The next moment, reports of the battle situation from each sector rang out through the talisman. As Chu Zi received each piece of information, he quickly relayed the intelligence to the Lord through his own transmission talisman. And the Janbei defensive line, Chen Fan stared at the missile launch panel before him, listening expressionlessly to the reports from the frontline breeding grounds and the Shadow Pavilion members in his ear. This time is different from last time. Last time, when the Huinquan Pass line was attacked, I had no specific intelligence, so I could only carpet bomb with heaven-piercing pillars, wasting quite a few of them in the relentless bombardment. But this time, I have the exact coordinates. Behind the breeding grounds at Wuming Mountain, the Lun Silent Missile Reserve Base saw one heaven-piercing pillar after another rise into the air, decompose in mid-flight and vanishing into Yone, rushing to support Frontline Sector 1 at incredible speed. At this moment, he had not received any further news from Yone, and was unclear about the situation on other front lines. He could only prepare for the worst, first holding the front line, then quickly moving all the civilians and resources behind this sector to the riverbank, ready to defend the western wasteland island to the death, or even fall back to the new continent. After an unknown amount of time, the breeding grounds Huinquan Pass line began to retract into the ground, making way for the Janbei line's deployment over a stretch of 170 kilometers. As the dragon-like Janbei line entered the Huinquan Pass area, a voice resounded across the heavens and earth. The breeding grounds are on the move. As the words fell, the ghost nests that had been lurking in the Huinquan Pass area frantically fled to both sides as if escaping for their lives. This was the max-level effect of his city wall, voice like a vast garden. The sound you make standing on the wall can echo across heaven and earth. The Huinquan Pass area was now the Huinji Wu town. He looked ahead in shock, watching the Janbei line advancing swiftly through the night, its end nowhere in sight. This was the first time he had seen the Janbei line on the move. The scale of support from the breeding grounds was unprecedented, and this also meant that Frontline Sector 1 was truly facing a major crisis. The war has really begun. This time, it's truly a total collapse. For some reason, he felt a vague unease in his heart. In truth, he thought this past year had been quite good. If only they could maintain this way of life for another year, that would be wonderful. But many things do not go as he wishes. Then he saw hundreds of ships sailing in full formation at full speed. This was the largest scale operation he had witnessed in the past year. At the Eternal Night Western Chuanwu Frontline Number 1, that short, ghostly figure, hidden in the darkness, clad in a black robe, watched as the masses of ghosts, conjured onto the starlight red glow, were precisely sniped one by the scorching white light striking from afar. His pupils, utterly devoid of emotion, grew distant. He tilted his head toward the north. For the first time, a ripple stirred within them. A faint, mocking smile curled at the corner of his mouth, playing around on a first-grade continent. To produce a force like this is rather interesting. If I recall correctly, The first great continent shouldn't have the authority to use the heaven-piecing pillars, should it? But is that all there is to it? He lightly tapped his forehead. His skin split open, and a drop of vivid essence blood drifted out from the wound, slowly suspending itself in midair. A low, guttural sound rang out. The next moment, a radiant light erupted from him, engulfing vast swaths of ghostly creatures once again. This time, it did not spawn more ghosts. Instead, it caused the skin on each ghost's surface to rapidly swell, bulging with one lump after another. Then, crackling explosions began to erupt with extreme density along the defensive line. As the ripened ghost slammed into the city wall, a brownish-red liquid splattered across its surface, beginning to corrode the stone. This was a 9th-grade defensive line, yet under that viscous, brownish-red blood, the wall's surface started to peel away bit by bit. At this rate, even if the wall were thick enough, it would be corroded through before dawn. All architects, follow my orders. Tow down and repair the wall. No need. Beside him, Chu Ziyu gently shook his head, stopping the person in charge from acting. What do you mean, no need? The person in charge asked instinctively. Because the warden has already arrived. Chu Ziyu turned his head, gazing into the distance toward the north, simply watching in silence. It had been a long time since he last saw the warden. Back when he was in Fanyu, he often saw the warden standing on the wall, lost in thought. After leaving Fanyu, not seeing that sight anymore, he always felt an emptiness in his heart, as if he had lost his backbone. The next moment, the ground began to tremble faintly. In the distance, barely visible, a defensive line stretching like a giant dragon was swiftly twisting past the ghost nest, skirting the coastline, and planting itself before the front line of Yanai West's Black Tortoise No. 1. Meanwhile, the voice rang out across heaven and earth. Everyone withdraw. This place is now officially under Fanyu's control. The voice was calm, yet carried an undeniable authority. In the blink of an eye, they only saw that 200-meter-high defensive line, already sailing from afar to their front, speeding past them and heading straight into the distance. Meanwhile, the communication talisman in the person in charge's hand crackled with Chen Fan's voice. You've worked hard. Withdraw now. Leave this to Fanyu. Chen Fan's voice was utterly calm, like a shot of stabilizer, making the previously panicked person in charge settle down almost instantly. Then, the divine cannons on this defensive line were fully activated, each starlight tread orb smashing heavily into the ghost nest. All ghost nests between the Janbei defensive line and Yanai West Black Tortoise No. 1 front line were being bombarded. Countless starlight tread blood serpents rampaged through the ghost nests. With a clang, the Janbei defensive line's mechanisms slammed heavily into the mountain range, locking into place like precise clasps, standing firm along the coastline, some repairing the walls. The ghost nests between the two defensive lines had been cleared. Thousands of divine cannons mounted on the Janbei defensive line began to roar. Open fire. One starlight tread shell after another, as if free, rained down into the ghost nests. The viscous blood from the ghost's self-destructions caused zero corrosion to the wall, and the few gaps that had been painstakingly corroded were instantly repaired by the bronze pipes, restored to perfection. The Janbei defensive line was not just a physical barrier, it was also a ghost nest. The pattern had absorbed years of actual defenses. Its actual strength far exceeded the ordinary. The actual defenses had finally arrived. Chen Fan stood atop the city wall. He stared expressionlessly ahead. The ghost nest, at the Xuanwu No. 1 front line in the western eternal night, it was on the verge of collapse. Just before it fell, this batch of ghost nests arrived stronger and more numerous. But according to the Dark Compartment members' report, this batch of ghost nests, they were occasionally shrouded in a burst of light. Each time the light enveloped them, the ghost nests grew stronger. At the center of the ghost nest, there was a ghostly figure performing a ritual-like step, enhancing this batch of ghost nests. He had already roughly guessed the coordinate range. The star's buff support was most likely located across the room. At the core of the ghost nest, he looked at the panel before him, his fingers moving slightly. Far away in the breeding ground, the stone tree root pillar reaching to the heavens behind the nameless mountain began to rise from the ground, suddenly soaring into the air and disintegrating. Target, the middle section of the Xuanwu No. 1 front line in the western eternal night, Zone 77. Deep within the ghost nest, that small, gaunt ghostly figure was sitting on the shoulder of a tall ghostly figure, with waves surging endlessly around them. He stared expressionlessly at this defense line, racing in from afar. A level 1-10 defense line. It seems this front line can't be breached tonight. Let's wait until tomorrow night. He was extremely far from the defense line, so he wasn't worried about the pillar reaching the heavens affecting him. Though it was extremely far away, but his gaze seemed to pierce through countless ghost nests, clearly seeing that defense line. Just then, he saw a blazing white light that, unlike usual, didn't fall outside the defense line's process, but instead landed in the sea deep within the eternal night. It made him couldn't help but let out a mocking laugh. It seemed they were coming for him. He was 100 miles away, but if they could find him, he'd accept it. Recharging the pillar to the heavens would take quite some time. I hope tomorrow night, you still have this many pillars to use. This small, gaunt creature wrapped in a black robe slowly rose to his feet, like an elegant gentleman, raising his right hand to announce the retreat. Tonight's charge was meaningless now. Wait for support from above tomorrow night. Yet the next moment, all along, a flicker of shock suddenly passed through his pupils. At the edge of the sky, over a dozen crimson light pillars suddenly appeared, spreading out, shooting toward him. This batch of pillars was more than enough to envelop him. The enemy indeed didn't know his exact location, but they had chosen a saturation strike. Without time to say another word, his expression instantly shed its usual calm, and he leaped from the shoulder of the ghostly figure beneath him into the sea, frantically waving his arms, and his small tail, swimming rapidly toward the depths of the ocean. At this moment, the only way to survive was to dive as deep into the seabed as possible, but it was already too late. Those dozen or so pillars, each splitting into 3 pillars in the air, enveloped the sea area spanning hundreds of kilometers, covering it all. The next moment, waves surged skyward, and countless ghostly corpses and debris, mixed with explosions, scattered across the sea. Deep in the eternal night, one ghostly figure after another, not yet landed, was met with a carpet bombing, and that small, gaunt ghostly figure, his eyes only had time to flash with a trace of disbelief, before he could only watch helplessly as the blazing white light engulfed him. How could this be? How could he die on a first-level continent? But the pillar to the heavens gave no answer. Fall. Then, in the western eternal night, this batch of ghost nests at the Xuanwu No. One front line, then looked at the crowd on the Janbei defense line. Their bodies began to rapidly melt, like crabs already rotting from the inside. The price of that enhancement was their lives. The crisis was resolved. It seemed he had guessed correctly. Standing on the city wall, Chen Fan, looking down at the batch of ghostly figures melting on the spot, the one responsible should have been that ritualistic ghostly figure, killed by the bombardment. After an unknown time, as dawn broke, the communicator in his arms grew warm. Inside, Elder Qiyu's voice rang out. Chen Fan, I've just received news from the Yanai Western, Xuanwu No. One front line. On behalf of the Yanai continent, I thank the Fine Yu for years of dedication to the Yanai continent. But regrettably, this war is over. Last night, the Ghost Clan launched a total assault, with intensity and numbers far exceeding before. The Eternal Night continent, except for the Yanai Western Xuanwu No. 1. Frontline, all other grade 9 frontlines, have nearly all fallen. 3 grade 10 frontlines have fallen, and the remaining grade 10 defenses won't hold much longer. At this moment, a large number of ghost nests have landed on the Yanai continent, beginning a massive slaughter. It is expected that within 7 days, all front lines of the Yanai continent will fall. In 14 days, the Yanai continent will cease to exist. Regrettably, in the end, we never saw the day of victory. Let us meet in hell with regret. Chen Fan listened expressionlessly to the messages coming through the communicator. He had never heard such a tone of despair from Elder Qiu before. It was almost tangible. After a moment, he spoke softly. This is the Janbei propagation domain. Chen Fan. Convey an important message. I am Chen Fan, the only heavenly Dao architect of the Yanai continent. I can instantly comprehend any building blueprint and construct any structure. My consumption is far lower than ordinary architects. My success rate is 100%, and my speed is faster. The Fine Yu initiates the Spark Plan, requesting the Yanai Hall's cooperation. From now on, all population of the Yanai continent and all resources are to be supplied to the Fine Yu without limit. The breeding bases, the war will not end. Humanity will not lose. The Yanai continent will not fall. The Fine Yu will hold West Phoenix Island to the death. The communicator was silent for a long time. After about 10 breaths, a voice came through again. But it was no longer Elder Qiyu's. Instead, it was a voice he had never heard before. Amizan, one of the 12 hall masters of the Yanai Hall. The Yanai Hall acknowledges receipt. We still have time. The front lines have fallen, but the hinterland still has time to evacuate. I will arrange as quickly as possible to send all population and resources to West Phoenix Island. May I ask how many people the Fan Yu can accommodate at most? Everyone, Chen Fang continued calmly. The Janbei Fan Yu possesses a new continent without ghost nests, capable of holding all people of the Yanai continent, as long as they can evacuate to West Phoenix Island. Even if West Phoenix Island cannot be held, they can retreat to the new continent. The other party agreed quickly, without even asking further, without even asking for more details. The Eternal Night Hall, we will fully cooperate with the Janbei Fan Yu's Spark Plan. The front lines will hold out as long as possible, buying time for the rear to evacuate. The rest is left to the Fan Yu. If possible, try to hold West Phoenix Island. As long as West Phoenix Island does not fall, the Yanai continent has not truly fallen. Our heavenly Dao will not perish. If the heavenly Dao perishes, all of us will become water without roots. All means of cultivators, including architects, will be stripped away, leaving no hope. As long as we hold West Phoenix Island, we still have hope for a counterattack. The Yanai continent still has hope. The moment the communicator hung up, an extremely brief meeting among the core high level of the Yanai Hall, the 12 Hall Masters quickly concluded. Then orders were rapidly issued. All forces of the Yanai continent began cooperating with the Fine Yu to execute the Spark Plan. An unprecedented large-scale evacuation operation began sweeping across the entire Yanai continent just as dawn broke. The entire foundation of the Yanai Hall was mobilized at all costs. Countless forces quickly organized their own resources and brought as many people as possible, heading west toward the Janbei Fan Yu. And amidst the crowd, figures moving against the tide stood out starkly, each carrying a blade, expressionless, working eastward. That was where the front lines lay. Someone must hold the front line. Only then can the rear have time to evacuate. Every extra day the front line holds, more people and resources can retreat to the western wasteland island. Eternal Night Westing Xuanwu Front Line 7. This level 9 defense line was nearly overrun last night. 7 night watchers were activated. Before it was barely held. Now the city wall is in shambles. Dozens of architects are rushing back and forth on the wall, quickly repairing the damaged areas. Large crowds are outside the defense line, frantically digging ghost stones from ghost corpses. These are tonight's ammunition. On this vast defense line, no one speaks. Though it's packed with people, I glance. It feels eerily silent. Not going back. It's a bit of a distance from here to Janbei Fanyu, but it's definitely enough for you to retreat. Once you're back on West Phoenix Island, it'll be much safer. It's not cold, there are no night watchers nearby anymore. With us here, this defense line can hold for one more night. One more night means many more lives saved. True. I've never seen the full form of Huixing Sun before. What will it look like when activated? I haven't seen it either. But then again, Tanyi, will our activation really have that much effect? Or maybe it's just a drop in the bucket. We have to try. True. Chen Yi fell silent, just gazing at the distant sea. I might not make it back to Xiang City, to farm with the strange insects. That time spent buried in the ground, though somewhat humiliating, bantering with the strange insects every day, was actually quite interesting. He truly loved the atmosphere of Fanyu. If the war could be won, he really wanted to return to Fanyu to farm, to live an ordinary life. By the way, Qiu Lao suddenly remembered something, sitting on the edge of the city wall and looking up at Tanyi. You stayed in Fanyu for so long. Didn't you know Fanyu has a teleportation array? Over in Fanyu, they are using teleportation arrays to move large numbers of people from the hinterlands to the western wasteland island. I really didn't know. Tanyi suddenly let out a helpless laugh. He finally understood why Chen Yuzhu had asked him back then about night shops and whether there were teleportation arrays. He was a bit busy at the time and asked, does Fanyu have one? It turned out Fanyu really did, even pulling out something like a teleportation array. Maybe Fanyu can truly hold the western wasteland islands. Fanyu. Now it's fully operational. Zhengji, a department just established a year ago, is now behind Wuming Mountain, rapidly mass-producing teleportation arrays. Meanwhile, the Shangji members scatter, taking Fiju to various regions, beginning to lay down teleportation arrays. They need to spread these arrays to every area of the Eternal Night continent as much as possible. Teleportation arrays can only move people, not resources. High-speed trains race past above Huangquan Pass, loaded with all kinds of resources. This is an unprecedented large-scale evacuation operation. Fenyu and the Eternal Night Hall join forces, trying to move all resources and population from the hinterlands to the western wasteland island as fast as possible. Wang Mezi personally leads the team, dispersing Shangji members, taking Fiju deeper into the Eternal Night continent's hinterlands, laying down a teleportation array at every interval, while constantly checking the ghost skin map in his hand. This ghost skin map in his hand was just obtained from the Eternal Night Hall, covering the entire Eternal Night continent's plates. Now the Yicheng region has completely turned into new flood, meaning these areas are fully lost, and these new flood regions, once lost, allow ghost nests to operate during the day, spreading like a virus in all directions. If the front line breaks at just one point, the consequences would be unimaginable. Last night, nearly all level 9 front lines fell. The Eternal Night Hall simply lacks the ability to reclaim all these front lines at once. In normal rainy seasons, losing 2 or 3 front lines was already a huge deal. This time, the number of lost front lines is far more than 2 or 3. This also marks the Eternal Night continent's official declaration of defeat. The rest is to evacuate from Africa and land quickly. Several members of the Commerce Guild swiftly and cheerfully departed from Africa, skillfully laying the teleportation array on the ground. This teleportation array was soon lit up. Members of the Logistics Guild teleported over, taking charge of receiving the population from nearby cities. They, in turn, continued boarding the Africa, venturing deep into the heart of the eternal night. Next stop. Wang Mezi stared at the ghost skin map in his hand. To the next stop. A group of breeding guild members were bustling along the front line of Xuanwu No. One in the western eternal night, laying copper pipes one by one on the city walls. Altar after altar, T's divine cannons were also quickly mounted on the walls. Chen Fan stood atop the wall, gazing at the scene before him. Silent, the Jiangbei defense line was only temporarily deployed for support. They had to return to Jiangbei before tonight. To hold Jiangbei tonight, all ghost nests attacked the front lines at nearly the same moment, bypassing the secondary defenses. After all, heading to the secondary defenses would require sneaking through and losing troops. If the front line could be breached, why bother with secondary defenses? It was utterly pointless, like taking off pants to fart. But once the enemy learned that the Western Wasteland and Jiangbei had such a massive gap, these ghost nests would certainly not mind sneaking through to raid Jiangbei by night. Thus, the Jiangbei defense line had to return today. Before leaving, all he could do was to reinforce the Western Eternal Night as much as possible. The Xuanwu No. One front line, to buy enough time for the rear evacuation. As for the remaining defenses, the Eternal Night continent was too vast. He couldn't manage it all. He was also grateful that before the Ghost Nest's night raid, the Eternal Night Hall had learned of the news in advance, promptly notifying every defense line. Thus, they weren't caught off guard, and through news from the Eternal Night Hall, he also learned that the one who had been trapped by the Ghost Clan in a region for years was released last night. Leave these pots and pans behind. Inside a civilian house in Xuanwu City, Xuanwu Plain, a middle-aged man was frantically packing his belongings into large bundles, stuffing items one by one into sacks. He hurriedly headed toward the Western Wasteland. Eating some wild grass or something can also sustain us, but mainly bring cotton clothes and blankets. With so many people going to the Western Wasteland and Jiangbei for breeding, how can they possibly provide heating for everyone? It's winter now. The weather is freezing cold. Who knows how many will freeze to death? Hurry, let's go, let's go. Behind the head of the household, a woman in a floral pattern cotton jacket had tears welling in her eyes. Do we really have to leave? Have the Ghost Clan really reached Xuanwu Plain? We finally settled down in Xuanwu City, and now we have to go. Nonsense. The man scolded angrily, panicked. The front lines are almost gone. What do you think? Can they reach Xuanwu Plain? As long as people live, there's always hope. Hurry, the breeding teleportation array has already sent batch after batch of people away. This scene unfolded in every corner of Xuanwu City. Whether it was the factions within the city, or the common folk, or even merchants and butchers, everyone tried to bring what they considered most important. In a vast, surging crowd, organized by the people of Xuanwu City's Lord's Manor, they rushed toward the teleportation town outside the city. Batch after batch turned into white light and vanished on the spot, transferring multiple times via the teleportation town to the Western Wasteland. In the crowd, a rough man carried large bundles on his shoulders, holding his wife and child by the hand. His wife also led several bundles, while the half-grown child with a braid clutched a wavy object tightly, following his father with some panic. The child didn't know what was happening, only that his father seemed unusually flustered today. City Lord, we should go too. In the city wall of Xuanwu City, an old man leaned against the wall, waved his hand grandly and said, "Move out." And said in a low voice, "Your wife and children, along with the attendants, are waiting in the courtyard. We can depart at any time." The middle-aged man said nothing. He simply stood atop the city wall, gazing silently at the refugees below. Xuanwu City had stood on the Xuanwu Plain for decades. His entire life's work was poured into this city. Leaving it would be no different from death to him. The man clasped his hands behind his back, and after a long silence, spoke softly. "You take them to the Western Wasteland Island. I will stay here. I want to watch this city with my own eyes as it heads toward its ruin." He gently stroked the wall's surface, and murmured, "When everyone is gone, an old friend will be lonely. I'll stay and see him off." The stooped old man behind him was silent for a moment, then rasped, "As you command. Per your orders, Lord City Lord. The ghost fires outside the city have been laid out. This old servant will ensure the lady's safety." Gradually, dusk crept across the sky. This city, which once almost represented the entire Xuanwu Plain, grew increasingly desolate. Fewer and fewer people could be seen, and the middle-aged man did nothing. He simply stood on the city wall. He vaguely recalled as a child, holding his father's hand as they climbed the wall, asking his father with wide-eyed curiosity how Xuanwu City had been built. His father chuckled and replied, "I only built its rough foundation. It's up to you to perfect it later." Back then, he had no idea what building a city truly meant. He just answered in his childish voice, "I will truly make Xuanwu City the greatest city under heaven." After an unknown time, the man suddenly laughed. "Well, so be it." Outside the city, Black Tortoise City, the head of the Tang family, along with Tang Yu and the rest of the Tang clan, stood by the teleportation array with bundles large and small, gazing at the city lord on the wall. After a long silence, the Tang Hen rasped, "Let's go. Can we ever come back?" Tang Yu's eyes glistened with tears. Only now did he realize that the man who once called himself the Chamber of Commerce head was Chen Fan of Jiangbei Fan Domain. The western wasteland island he now sheltered was the last safe place in the Eternal Night continent. "We will," the Tang head said, gently patting Tang Yu's shoulder. "Let's go." The next moment, the Tang clan vanished from the spot. The vast Xuanwu city was now utterly empty, with not a soul left. Only scattered debris at the city gate remained, a testament that many had once been here. Night fell. Soon after, when the train slowly stopped inside Mount Wuming, almost the instant darkness swept in from the horizon, shaking the earth and mountains. Within the Xuanwu plain, the continuous mountain range that had shrouded the entire plain began to slowly collapse. It means the formation that had protected the Xuanwu plain for years appeared and began to crack. The Xuanwu plain had no defensive line, for its nodes had always been intact, but now, as the regions bordering the plain fell one by one, the nodes trapped within the plain began to shatter mournfully. The mountain range that had stood for untold years began to crumble in sorrow. The ground trembled from the quake. Countless ghost nests surged through the dust, their twisted faces charging into the Xuanwu plain. This was the first time seabed ghost nests had landed on the plain. After an unknown time, the middle-aged man on the city wall slowly came back to his senses, gazing at the ghost fires outside Xuanwu city lit one by one. After the eternal night descended, hundreds of lit ghost fires allowed him to see with extreme clarity the vast horde of ghost nests charging from afar. But though those nests charged with all their might, they seemed to grow farther from the city. Not a single ghost mist reached the wall. The man laughed. He instinctively quickly suppressed his smile, maintaining his usual composure, but soon realized there was no one else here. Only then did he laugh again. But the next moment, a piercing shriek suddenly came from among the ghost nests, ringing across the sky. Then, these ghost nests seemed to break some kind of limit, accelerating their charge toward the wall, closing the distance rapidly. The smile on the middle-aged man's face slowly froze. The stench almost condensed into a tangible form, rushing toward him. The countless ghost nests were getting closer and closer to him. This was the first time he had seen a ghost nest of such scale. Then, the turrets mounted on the city walls began to open fire one after another. One ghost nest after another was smashed to pieces. But Xuanwu City was, after all, an inland city. It was a city built by a single force, not a defensive line, and the ghost nest before them had already broken through the front lines. The sporadic cannon fire was like children playing. It couldn't even stir up a ripple. In the blink of an eye, like a tidal wave, countless ghost nests, with irresistible force, braved the turret's fire, bombarded and charged onto the city walls. At this moment, the city lord, who had long since returned to the city lord's mansion, lit 3 incense sticks with slightly trembling hands. Standing in his family's ancestral hall, he looked at his father's memorial tablet. He bowed once. As he bowed a second time, countless ghost nests surged into Xuanwu City. A ghost nest with fierce light in its eyes charged into the hall, staring at the mine's dim, gray back. It raised its sickle. The mine let out a soft sigh. A trace of reluctance flashed in his eyes. He bowed a third time. A skyward burst of flames erupted from the center of Xuanwu City. The green bricks paving the entire city quickly lit up with glowing lines. In an instant, red patterns spread like a web. The entire Xuanwu City was engulfed in blazing orange red flames. The screams and roars of countless ghost nests echoed across the sky. From this day forth, the name Xuanwu City would be no more. Countless ghost nests were buried with it. The Xuanwu Plain was declared lost. On West Wasteland Island, the night was deep, but the breeding Yellow Springs Pass defense line was extremely busy. To date, they had received a massive influx of resources and people. A large number of logistics members operated giant tracks, rapidly laying copper pipes along a newly built stone-tier defense line. Altars, divine cannons, and other structures were also being set up. A single level 1-10 breeding Imperial Pass defense line was simply not enough to protect West Wasteland Island. They needed more level 10 defense lines. 2, 3, even 4. The more the better. The ghost nests had not yet arrived here, but tonight, many more regions on the Eternal Night continent had fallen. Time was running out for them. Many members of the breeding organization hadn't slept since last night. They were too busy to stop. Chen Fan was also shuttling back and forth between the 3 defense lines. Meanwhile, one by one, the foundations of level 10 defense lines rose from the ground. The logistics members followed closely, quickly perfecting them. From last night until now, he hadn't slept either. He was building. No matter how fast his construction speed was, it still took time. He couldn't build structures in his sleep. And just now, he had been in Jiangbei, finishing a new Jiangbei No. 2 defense line, also level 10. No content, 170 kilometers long. It was located behind the Jiangbei No. 1 defense line. Are 2 level 10 defense lines enough? Quadhu's voice on the city wall trembled slightly. This is a full-scale assault, and the new continent, even the level 7-10 defense lines have fallen. Not enough. Chen Fan took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I've built 100 new brick kilns in the Janbei wasteland. Have the people from the logistics department quickly taken the fleeing population and select capable hands to quickly learn how to operate the giant trucks. Have these people use the giant ghosts to build 1 or even 2 defense lines in Janbei. The more the better. Young master, Quadhu's heart skipped a beat. Young master is truly too busy and has forgotten something. The bricks from those kilns are very low in strength. They can't stop the ghost nests at all. I know. Chen Fan looked at Quadhu. But if the height reaches 200 meters, we can disguise them as level 10 defense lines. It will make the ghost nests think twice, slowing their advance and buying us enough time. We need time to receive and digest resources. We also need time to build the real defense lines. As long as we can fool the ghost nests for a while, we can turn the fake lines into real ones. No content. The male ghost kneeling on the ground said no more. Quadhu instantly understood the situation. He immediately turned around and gave the orders. Fortunately, the breeding organization had been through many large-scale events. Its members were all battle-hardened veterans. Even now, with so many people suddenly flooding into West Wasteland Island, throwing everything into chaos, the breeding organization could still maintain its operations, not collapsing under the pressure. Soon, thousands of giant ghosts, he began to stumble and stagger as he worked across the northern wasteland. Under the night, he swayed unsteadily, but soon his steps grew firmer and steadier. Sitting in a brick kiln on the northern wasteland, he started producing massive bricks. Each of these bricks was enormous, towering several times taller than a person. Aside from using giant rails, ordinary people could never hope to move them. The 170-kilometer-long armor defense line was an extraordinarily massive project. This project was even far larger than Chen Fan's needle defense line, by a considerable margin. But at this moment, the western wasteland island lacked nothing, except for people. There were plenty of them, as more and more giant rails emerged. The 170-kilometer-long armor defense line gradually rose from the ground, standing atop the city wall. Chen Fan gazed at this scene. His expression was blank, silent, and he spoke no words. Receiving people could be done using teleportation arrays, but receiving resources required Africa and high-speed rail, which was far slower. At this moment, he had not yet received many resources. Most resources were still on the way, and had not yet arrived at Fanyu. He had to first put up a bluff, lest the ghost nest decided to deal with Fanyu first. If they were willing to pay a heavy price to sneak into the western wasteland island, that would be difficult to handle. As for whether it would be useful or not, he didn't know either. He would try it first and see. The teleportation array to the new continent operated rapidly and repeatedly, transporting the elderly, weak, women, and children all to the new continent. The 3-year deadline had passed. Those who had been drenched by the whale could also go to the new continent. The remaining young and strong were quickly absorbed by Fanyu and dispatched to various places. This time, the ghost nest was extraordinary. He had to be prepared for the possibility that the undersea tunnel might be destroyed. Once the undersea tunnel was destroyed, the two continents would only be able to communicate via teleportation arrays, but teleportation arrays could only transport people, not goods. This meant that food and such would basically be unable to be shipped over. He didn't think much about it, and pulled out a bottle of pills from his bosom. He took out a cooling pill and tossed it into his mouth. Instantly, he felt much more clear-headed. Then he rode Africa toward the No. 7 defense line of the Guandan Plain. He needed to forge another level 10 No. 7 defense line. Just then, a tiny, refreshing breeze suddenly raced in from the horizon, and stopped steadily in front of Chen Fan. The night was deep on the eternal night continent, but tonight was not like other nights. Even though night had already fallen, there were still large numbers of Africa and high-speed rail, heading toward the western wasteland island. The eternal night shop had dispatched almost all of its Africa. These Africa had only one mission, to transport resources to the western wasteland island. Africa, rarely seen on ordinary days, now filled the skies above the Yellow Spring Pass, swarming back and forth endlessly, and far away in the southern part of the eternal night continent, at the southern eternal night White Tiger No. 4 front line, a middle-aged man in a green robe stood on a defense line that had been reduced to ruins. Beside him, 2 enormous crocodiles, covered in scars, lay on the ground, panting heavily, and the defense line, already turned to rubble, were piled countless corpses of ghostly creatures, and ahead of him, more and more ghost nests were landing from the seabed, but they did not charge. Instead, they gathered together. How should I address you? From the ghost nest emerged a massive ghost, and perched on its shoulder was a small, short ghostly creature spanning thousands of meters. Its voice rang across the sky, directed at the middle-aged man. Give me a title. Just call me that one. The middle-aged man stood on the ruined defense line and looked down at the 3-foot breeze in his hand. This breeze had no name. He had always wanted to wait for the right moment to give it a proper name, but that right moment never came. Since everyone called him that one, he might as well just be called that one. It had a nice ring to it, that one. The small, skinny ghost creature sitting on the ghost emperor's shoulder showed no change in expression and calmly said, "I have fought countless battles in my life, but this is the first time I have seen the fallen heavenly Dao transform into a round form and even develop its own emotions. You have held us back for 2 days and 1 night. We cannot kill you. You have transcended reincarnation and become an undying existence. But I still have many ghostly minions under my command, while your sword seems to be growing dull." The middle-aged man said nothing. He merely lowered his head to gaze at the clear wind in his hand, then instinctively turned his head to look toward the northwest. That direction was Jianbei. It could be considered his home. At the southern eternal night White Tiger No. 4 front line, and the first night, when the Ghost Clan launched their general assault, it had already fallen. He passed by this place, and seeing this scene, he initially wanted to pretend he had seen nothing, to hurry back to Jianbei and visit home, and also let the 2 fellows who had suffered with him for so long meet his child, but after running halfway, he still turned back. He still could not bear to see the ghost horde slaughtering humans wantonly. He fought from last night to tonight, killing for 2 days and 1 night. An endless nest of ghosts along a 78-kilometer defense line. He held it alone. But now, his body seemed to have no strength left, as if he could not return. He had not yet gone back to Jianbei to see it, had not yet sat on Nameless Mountain to daydream, had not yet helplessly watched those 2 fellows compete over who could dig a bigger and deeper latrine pit. The only good news was that after breaking free, he had seen that little one, alive and well in Jianbei, especially after learning that Fan Yu was guarding Jianbei, and the Eternal Night Continent had initiated the Great Evacuation Plan, with all humans and resources retreating to West Wasteland Island City. He had to hold this place even more. Was it meaningful? The gaunt little ghost standing on the Ghost Emperor's shoulder flashed a sly smile at the corner of its mouth. "Even if you block us, so what? Can you cover the other defense lines?" The middle-aged man turned his head to look into the distance, at the gaunt little ghost speaking to him within the ghost tide. "Big fish, if I asked you to leave Fan Yu, you really are so tiny. How dare you?" The ghost's face instantly darkened. "Our royal clan honors smallness as nobility. Ha 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 ha. Is that so? Then why stand on the giant beast's shoulder? To speak with me? Afraid I can't see you." The ghost standing on the Ghost Emperor's shoulder had a fierce glint in its eyes, but still hesitated to order another charge into the seabed. Those mindless ghost nests dared not charge at this man at all. He could only send his own army to attack, but every ghost soldier he lost pained him deeply. "Forget it," he suddenly laughed as well. "Sharp tongues have always been something you humans excel at. Since you're willing to waste time here, then I'll waste time with you. I'm not in a hurry. Let's take it slow. Run again. I'm not human at all. That's mistake 1. I never planned to waste time here with you. That's mistake 2. You got too close to me. That's mistake 3. The gaunt little ghost on the Ghost Emperor's shoulder changed color instantly, and almost immediately leaped off the Ghost Emperor's shoulder, fleeing swiftly into the depths of the ghost tide. Over these 2 days and 1 night, it had clearly judged that the man's farthest attack range could not reach it here, but it was already too late. It suddenly felt enveloped by a shadow, and instinctively looked up. There, an enormous hammer hung abruptly above its head, crashing down heavily upon it, shaking the earth and mountains. A massive crater appeared in the center of the ghost tide. That gaunt little ghost, along with the abandoned Ghost King, and a host of others within range, were all crushed into a pulp under that single blow. With one strike, the surrounding ghost nests fled into the sea, just as they did in the old days when he sat in Jianbei. The middle-aged man looked at the scene before him, a hint of a smile flashing in his eyes. "Finally get you to show your face. So tiny, yet your words were so arrogant." In the distance, the hammer rapidly shrank. The hammer in the distance rapidly shrank, and headed toward his chicken coop. The man grabbed it and stuffed it into his bosom. Only then did he pick up the 3-foot clear breeze in his hand again, and work toward the next line of defense. There's no need to worry about this line of defense tonight. Meanwhile, crimson clouds had silently appeared at the horizon. Those crimson clouds pierced through the eternal night, raining down blood. A mournful sorrow filled the heavens and earth. Seeing this, the man curled his lip. Isn't it just burning a bit of the heavenly Tao's essence blood? This kind of celestial phenomenon always makes it seem like he's about to die. And besides, he really wanted to split open a kiln. First of all, only ghosts with ambition. Only after a ghost king falls will there be a celestial phenomenon. The ghosts at the bottom of the sea. After a ghost king falls, there won't be any celestial phenomenon. The most important thing is to spread that rumor. That the celestial phenomenon arises because heaven and earth mourn the ghost king's fall, that's pure nonsense. The heavenly Dao here is the heavenly Dao of the eternal night continent. Why would it arise for a ghost king's fall? It's celebrating, alright. Really, I don't know who started spreading that rumor. Heaven and earth weeping. Does a ghost den like him deserve that? No need to send you two back. He turned his head to look at the two crocodiles following beside him. Don't call us hey. One of them, the larger crocodile, grumbled in displeasure. Bus, can Chen Fan even name things? Why did he name my child Wei? What kind of crappy name is that? Now whenever I hear that word, I get pissed off. The other crocodile, who was rarely seen today, didn't argue but nodded in agreement, and said indignantly, "Isn't the name Little Flower that I picked good? Honestly, they both sound average." The middle-aged man chuckled and walked forward. With every step, he covered vast distances. The heavenly Dao cannot be killed, but if its essence blood burns out, it dies. He still had 2 drops left, enough to get by. He often felt like an anomaly. Logically, the heavenly Dao shouldn't have emotions, but he did. Logically, after his last self-destruction, he should have fallen. Yet he survived in a strange state. He didn't know what he was anymore. Let it be. Good enough. The 2 crocodiles beside him, as usual, bickered for a while. After a long silence, the larger crocodile couldn't help but speak. "Bus, Chen Fan and the others found a new continent. It should be your old continent, Bus. You were once the heavenly Dao of that continent. Why don't you go back with a breeding group to the new continent? That's your home." "That's not my home." The man shook his head and said casually, "The heavenly Dao there is already dead. To me now, the eternal night continent is home." "Bus, what does it feel like to be the heavenly Dao?" "Pretty boring. Blink once, and centuries pass. As the heavenly Dao, you can't just do whatever you want. You're overthinking it. The heavenly Dao has no emotions or desires. It doesn't even have a physical form. It can't do anything." That does sound boring. Feels even more boring than being trapped here for all these years. If you compare it that way, it really is much more boring than your situation. At least you two have each other to play with. Back then, I had nothing to play with at all. "Hey boss, that sounds weird when you say it like that. Don't call me hey boss. You called us hey just now, fair's fair." Eternal Night West, Black Tortoise Frontline 7. Tonight is the second night of the Ghost Tide's general offensive. 4 cities in the Eternal Night continent have completely fallen. No reinforcements, no logistics. Every line of defense fights with their backs to the wall. And the Eternal Night West Black Tortoise Frontline 7 has reached the moment of running out of supplies. There is still 1 hour until dawn. But this line of defenses, stored ghost stones, are nearly exhausted. The turrets gradually fall silent. More and more ghost nests, unrestrained, charges forward. The city's fall hangs by a thread. It's our turn now. Pangxi, the imprisoned elder sitting on the city wall, slowly rose to his feet. With sluggish movements, he shed his upper garment, like peeling away a strip of withered bark. When the last piece of fabric slipped off, his gaunt upper body was exposed to the wind of the eternal night. He was already old, very old. His ribs jutted out in stark, distinct ridges, rising and falling faintly with his heavy breaths. Though his muscles were shriveled, golden spots clung tightly beneath the skin like ancient tree roots, outlining a hard, angular silhouette in the dim light. "How about it? Old as I am, this physique still looks decent, doesn't it? Master, your presence remains as impressive as ever. Not what it used to be. I've achieved nothing much in this life, quite the failure. Back then, your master's wife made me hide the fact that our own child was a night watcher. She didn't want him to join the Eternal Night Hall, but I was a bit stubborn back then, always thinking if others' children could sacrifice, why couldn't my own? After that, your master's wife and I went our separate ways. She passed away in a foreign land. Sometimes I think about it, it was pretty foolish. Did the Eternal Night Hall really need one more night watcher that badly? Never mind." In the biting wind, Qiu Lao's lips trembled slightly. He let out a soft sigh, as if hesitating to speak, like drawing a period on his own life. Though unsatisfied, that's just how it is. As he slowly inhaled, his hunched spine straightened inch by inch. Joints crackled like beans popping in a pan. Then, beneath his skin, a golden red, blazing light rapidly emerged, as if magma had begun to surge anew through his withered veins. Qiu Lao left behind one last sentence. Like bidding farewell to an old friend, he began to run. He ran along the city wall toward the northern side. At first, slow, but after 3 steps, his speed suddenly surged. It was a desperate resolve to compress his entire life into a brief, blazing acceleration. Flames began to seep out of his body. With every step, a ring of fiery ripples was left on the city wall, until, when his speed reached its peak, Qiu Lao's figure was no longer visible. Only a mass of golden red sun hung high in the sky, like a golden meteor streaking in reverse, plunging straight into the depths of the ghost nest at the end of the line. Wherever it passed, Countless ghostly dwellings didn't even have time to scream. Before turning to ash, Xianxia stood still, watching his masters departing back in silence. He vaguely remembered when he first joined the Eternal Night Hall, the Western Action Group, and the wall hung a couplet. Only the first line, no second line. Even if a mayfly drifts into the sea, he asked his master, where's the second line? His master said, haven't thought of it yet. When I do, it'll be the slogan for the Eternal Night Hall's Western Action Group. Later, he added the second half. He said, how about I still dye the blood and burn the heavens? His master was very pleased. He smiled and said, that's the one. Later, that line was hung in the Eternal Night Hall, the Western Action Group headquarters. Only later did he learn that his master was also a special cultivator of 5-star sun. That's why his master liked the second half so much. He turned his head again, looking toward the northern direction of the western wasteland island. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Those days were truly worth remembering. Too bad he actually quite liked farming. In a daze, golden flames began to flow rapidly within his body. An immensely powerful force surged through him. He took one last look at his master's retreating figure, murmuring lowly, even if a mayfly plunges into the sea, it must stain the blood and burn the heavens. As the golden light on his skin grew less and less, until it wrapped his entire body into a mass, a working human-shaped flame. His breathing gradually became ragged. With every exhale, he spat out golden mist laced with sparks. He began to run toward the southern side of the defense line, the speed growing faster and faster, until he too leaped into the air, an eagle striking the vast sky, crushing into the boat's nest like a star. 2 suns, at the Eternal Night Westing Chuanwu Frontline Station No. 7. Countless soldiers guarding the city along the defensive line watched this scene in silent, grim-faced solemnity. They knew that figures of such stature had countless ways to survive. If they wished to retreat, these great figures could have fled to the western wasteland island on the very first day, but they did not retreat. Instead, they stayed to hold the rear with them. Someone had to hold the rear. Day broke. The Eternal Night Westing Chuanwu Frontline Station No. 7 held firm as the crowd emerged from the defensive line and began digging ghost stones from the ghostly corpses. Preparing to marvel at their own defense, they saw 2 piles of ash, shapeless, no longer human, but everyone knew who those ashes belonged to. People only glanced briefly and did not linger long, busying themselves with digging out ghost stones, yet they would silently step around those spots. Henceforth, the names Qiuici and Tanyi would vanish from the world. The former leader of the Eternal Night Chap Western Action Team, the acting leader of the Eternal Night Chap Western Action Team, fell in battle on the second day of the Ghost Clan's full-scale assault. The overall commander of the Eternal Night Westing Chuanwu Defense Line No. 7 was an elderly man of advanced years, now trembling, as he piled 2 small mounds of earth on the city wall. He retrieved some clothing from the temporary quarters of Qiu Lao and Tanyi, and built 2 cenotaphs. He also found a diary in Qiu Lao's garments. The first page recorded his excitement at joining the Eternal Night Chap and becoming a member of its action team. The second and third pages spoke of marriage and children. The third and fourth pages mentioned Prince Wang Kai. The fifth page was longer, detailing the lonely end of Prince Jing of King. What does the fish seek? To wash the long night in blood. The old man chuckled as he flipped through the pages. Qiu Lao had written his own final words in the diary, saying that before death, he must roar out Qiuici, for Qiuici would show boldness and carefree spirit. But there was a slight regret. He had not heard that cry last night. Farewell, the old man said, rising slowly. Tonight, I will come to join you. Everyone on this defensive line knew that tonight might be their last, yet no one retreated. Perhaps they thought fleeing now would be shameful, or perhaps they had no ties left. Or maybe their wives and children had already gone ahead. There could be many reasons, but none could be known for sure. What he saw was that no one retreated. He turned to look behind the defensive line, and the pale plain, dense rows of skeletal carriages were heading north through the night, rushing toward the western wasteland island. An extremely spectacular sight at a glance, glowing golden in the morning light. The purpose of their defensive line was to allow more people to evacuate to the western wasteland island. Not everyone could board the African high-speed rail, or even the teleportation arrays. Most still relied on skeletal carriages, but even skeletal carriages were unaffordable for ordinary people. Those factions had shouldered their responsibility, forging large numbers of skeletal carriages, picking up everyone they saw along the way, thus forming this spectacular exodus. Animals migrate, humans flee disaster. In a sense, there is little difference. No one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy with oppression. As the first ray of dawn broke through, the news of the Eternal Night Continent's evacuation to the western wasteland island eventually reached the Ghost Clan, and the primordial continent where the Ghost Clan bred. The former Ghost Clan leader now had his head hanging above the great hall, and the throne sat a gaunt, ghostly being holding a scepter, sitting like a dwarf on the massive throne, utterly incongruous. At this moment, the ghostly being was earnestly bowing its head to trim its nails. After an unknown time, it blew a light, satisfied breath. A command drifted out with the nail dust. No need to sneak across, wasting troops. Advance as planned. First, eliminate all humans on the Eternal Night continent. Completely wipe them out. Then go to the Western Wasteland Island and round up the rest in one fell swoop. A first-grade continent being able to produce a force like this, it must have had some extraordinary encounters. But it doesn't matter. A first-grade continent limits this force's ceiling. No matter how strong they get, they won't pose any real threat. At most, they'll just buy themselves a little more time to survive. Right then, this gaunt ghost dwelling suddenly thought of something. That ghost emperor who calls himself that day. Drag him out of the prison. Send him to the front lines. Let him lead the assault on those toughest battlefronts. The male ghost kneeling on the ground said no more. A hoarse voice echoed from below the great hall. This ghost emperor who calls himself that day. He secretly released that person, allowing the Eternal Night Hall to learn of our plans in advance and prepare defenses. Though it doesn't affect the overall situation, some punishment is certainly unavoidable. Then, this ghost creature fumbled in its bosom for a long while, then pulled out, rebel. Immediately after, its voice drifted eerily through the hall. May I ask, what is that thunderstorm sea region that surrounds the entire Eternal Night continent? Our royal clan came through a rift in the ghost clan's primordial land, and after invading that primordial land, we arrived at this Eternal Night continent. Our royal clan has waged war for years, once conquering 2 continents, but we've never seen anything like this. That thunderstorm sea region made him feel vaguely uneasy. He shook the bell in his hand. Soon, a voice utterly devoid of emotion rang out from within the bell. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. I cannot tell you. This ghost dwelling seated on the throne squinted its eyes slightly. It hadn't expected that even the heaven-questioning spirit couldn't give it an answer. A place it had never seen appearing on a first-grade continent. That meant it was an opportunity. It continued to ask, is the thunderstorm sea region meant to protect the Eternal Night continent, or to imprison it? Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. I cannot tell you. If I conquer the Eternal Night continent, will this thunderstorm sea region take offense at me? Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. I cannot tell you. How interesting. It licked the corner of its mouth. It continued asking, has anyone ever passed through the thunderstorm sea region? Yes. This time, the heaven-questioning spirit finally gave an answer, no longer saying heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. What is the success rate of passing through the thunderstorm sea region? 10%. A flicker of bewilderment passed through its eyes. It asked again in disbelief. The answer it got was still 10%. As for the specific origin of this thunderstorm sea region, even the heaven-questioning spirit didn't know. It had thought it was some formidable thing. But in the end, the success rate of passing through the thunderstorm sea region was actually 10%. 10%, doesn't that mean anyone can pass through? Yet it had clearly sense. A very dangerous aura from within that thunderstorm sea region. It immediately stopped lingering. Descend with me upon the Eternal Night continent. Head to the thunderstorm sea region. Not far from the depths of the sea region, dark clouds pressed nearly onto the sea's surface. Waves surged violently. Countless ghost dwellings tumbled within the waves. Meanwhile, countless bolts of lightning danced wildly through the air. Lead a team in. This gaunt ghost dwelling, holding a scepter, stood atop a ghost general's shoulder, commanding a nearby ghost general. Lead a team into the thunderstorm sea region. The ghost general merely grunted in acknowledgement, then charged toward the thunderstorm sea region atop the waves. The moment it entered the area, a scream suddenly rang out. A bolt of lightning, swift beyond measure, descended from the sky, striking the ghost general straight down into the deep sea. Its mouth twitched slightly. It pulled out the heaven-questioning spirit again and shook it. What's the success rate now? 10%. One failed, then no one died. It fell silent. So, not dying means it's not a failure. Well, maybe it really doesn't count. It's just temporarily trapped there. As for when it'll get out, only heaven knows. It's said that any ghost dwelling entering this area automatically gains eternal life, nearly immortal and everlasting. The only flaw is that the rest of your life will be spent in agony. First, take the Eternal Night continent, then go back and ask if anyone has seen something like this. This gaunt ghost, holding a scepter in hand, shrugged its shoulders. It tucked the heaven-questioning spirit into its bosom, and returned it to the hands of the man from the primordial continent. This heaven-questioning spirit is a fine treasure. It just consumes a bit too much. Before leaving, he asked another question. Do you think the royal clan should make the Western Ghost Nest abandon its attack and sneak across the front lines to the Western Wasteland Island? Is it better to first take the entire Eternal Night continent, or to take the Western Wasteland Island first? Whatever. What do you mean? The heaven-questioning spirit only knows the past, not the future. This thunderstorm sea domain is from the past. Why didn't you say so? Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. I cannot tell you. Useless. Just after noon, as night fell, Chen Fan stood on the Janbei defense line, He gazed at the churning sea under the darkness. Difficult. Tonight is the 7th night of the Ghost Clan's general assault. The rest is up to heaven's will. These 7 days, the Eternal Night continent has nearly completely fallen. Regrettably, although the Western Wasteland Island has taken in a massive number of refugees, countless people were still caught by the Ghost Nest and the road of escape. At this moment, the Western Wasteland Island has completely sealed itself off. He believed that in many corners of the Eternal Night continent, there must still be some who hadn't made it to the Western Wasteland Island in time. Fan Yu has done his best. Many factions didn't dare to come, but they handed over their resources to the Eternal Night Shop. The resources sent out arrived at the Western Wasteland Island. The Eternal Night Shop only borrows resources, it doesn't take in people. Transport capacity is insufficient. At first, he could still receive messages personally sent by the Eternal Night Shop's manager. Later, they gradually stopped coming. Just then, the child mother talisman in his bosom grew scorching hot, and a strange voice came through. This is the last message from the Eternal Night Shop. Eternal Night Shop, 12th branch, Cheng Yu, just fell in battle on the Xuanwu Eastern Front, at the Azure Dragon 13th line. All 12 managers of the Eternal Night Shop have died in battle. If Fan Yu can carry on the legacy, please record this matter. The child mother talisman was extremely noisy, mixed with the howls of countless ghost houses. Before he could say anything, the talisman was cut off. As night fell, the Western Wasteland Island officially sealed itself off. Lines of brightly lit defenses stood at the 3 gaps, beginning the final resistance. A few defense lines had yet to fall, but they were close. The Ghost Nest was about to strike. The great battle was about to descend. In the Xuanwu Eastern Front, Azure Dragon 13th line, a young man named Feng Jianshu hastily cut off the child mother talisman, his face covered in blood, gripping his dagger tightly, staring at the Ghost Emperor who had already mounted the defense line, grinning widely. This defense line has already fallen. The Ghost Emperor, having climbed the city wall, gazed expressionlessly at the man before him, who raised his dagger. After casually waving his hand to swat aside the ghost houses that charged forward, he drew his own blade from his bosom. The Ghost Clan has always admired human culture, and equally respects humans, that resolved to charge forward despite knowing certain death. He considered himself different from the royal clan. Without the barrier of the defense line, a human is no match for a Ghost Emperor. After getting familiar with it, he thrust his blade into the man's chest, and said in a low voice, "My name is Nartan. In your human culture, Nar is a rather noble surname. Though I don't know your name, you are worthy of this surname." Feng Jianshu, on the brink of death, clung tightly to the arm Nartan had driven into his chest, and with all his strength, spat a mouthful of bloody foam heavily onto Nartan's face. If one were to view this from the perspective of the Eternal Night Continent's heavenly Dao, they would see the ghost fires of the Eternal Night Continent extinguishing one by one, until the entire continent was shrouded in eternal night. A dead silence. Only on the Western Wasteland Island did a few ghost fires still remain. Those defense lines was the last hope of the Eternal Night continent. Rain fell, a great downpour upon the Western Wasteland Island. All were bathed in that rain. They felt the wounds on their bodies, slowly beginning to heal, as if blessed by the heavenly Dao, yet as if the heavenly Dao itself wept. From the rain, they sensed an overwhelming sorrow. The heavenly Dao was weeping. The heavenly Dao is the most prone to grief. Everyone knew that the Eternal Night continent had nearly fallen completely. Many had died, but they had not witnessed the truth with their own eyes. They had not seen eyes filled with despair, mingled with a tide of refugees, even lizards beginning to flee, overtaken and utterly devoured by the ghost nests. They had not seen the lowly sufferers I would surely burn the heavens and die in blood, in the front lines at Tianyin, nor had they seen those who knew they could not win, yet still raised their blades and charged forward the younger brothers. And all of this, the heavenly Dao witnessed completely. The heavenly Dao has no emotions. Perhaps that is a form of protection for the heavenly Dao. Night had deepened. The No. 1 defense line at the breeding Yellow Spring Pass welcomed guests, 2 enormous crocodiles, covered in wounds, and drenched in blood. And on the crocodiles' backs, they carried a middle-aged man, who was unconscious. His hand tightly gripped a 3-foot King Feng Terrace sword. YY was somewhat incredulous, yet also heartbroken as he rushed forward, licking the wounds on the 2 crocodiles again and again. Almost instantly, he recognized them as his parents. The massive crocodile on the left, YY's father, spoke with a tone carrying a smile. "Happy to see Dad?" YY was first startled, never expecting his father could speak human words. His eyes instantly reddened as he nodded repeatedly. Then the crocodile opened its mouth wide and spat out a pile of things. There were braised dishes and dumplings, and strange stones collected during lonely years on Nameless Mountain. Oddities gathered out of bottom. What kind of junk is all this? This enormous crocodile gazed deeply at YY with reluctance. Just as it was about to say more, its pupils suddenly began to dilate. It turned its head with difficulty to look behind, at the long, gaping wound, and forced a smile, then crashed to the ground. The other, small a crocodile beside it, only looked at YY with eyes full of tenderness. With difficulty, it picked up a braised dish from the ground and ate it, forcing out a smile. Tastes good, YY. Then it crawled a few steps to the side of the crocodile that had fallen, and slowly closed its eyes. YY couldn't speak. His eyes were just red. He rushed madly to Chen Fan, who had arrived from afar, and nudged him with his head. Chen Fan then hurried back to his fallen parents, though he said nothing. His meaning was crystal clear. Don't worry, YY. Chen Fan stepped forward first, and placed his hand under the huge nostrils. He felt no breath. The breeding members had already begun pouring holy water. The arriving Vala Master of Medicine King Vala found it tricky. Dao Prison Master, Medicine King Valley isn't skilled in healing longevity matters. Medicine King Valley added salt to the wound. The Eternal Night Continent wasn't a particularly strong force. At this moment, it was truly like forcing a duck onto a perch. Zyro Kyu. Chen Fan's face was grim as he pulled out a sound transmission talisman from his bosom to contact Zyro Kyu, preparing to have Zyro Kyu send a few medical experts who had recently arrived at the breeding grounds to handle this. Just then, Chen Yuju, let us do it. A group stepped out from the crowd. The leader looked somewhat familiar. Jane and he family. Unexpected that Chen Yuju still remembers us. We joined the breeding defense line a few days ago to jointly guard the Western Wasteland Island and rendered meritorious service in firefighting. After a brief exchange, YY's parents were handed over to this group. He remembered them, the Jan and he family, a family of beast tamers with deep research into spirit beasts. Their main business was forging spiritual treasures for spirit beasts. They had even opened a shop at the breeding grounds before, but later went bankrupt. There really aren't that many people buying spirit treasures for spirit beasts. The number of spirit beasts is just too small. You people need to head down to the ancient area. Zyro Kyu has already sent people to support you. Stop the fire at all costs. Chen Fan looked toward the middle-aged man in a green robe, standing on the crocodile's back. Chen Cheng said it was this man. He had already guessed who it was. It was the one who once lived on Nameless Mountain. Now, he was heavily injured and unconscious. After finishing all this, Chen Fan finally stepped onto the city wall. Standing in the rainy night, he gazed at the Ghost Valley's territory beyond the wall. At the Yellow Spring Pass, he had built a total of 4 defensive lines here. All were level 10 defenses. This was also where the most had been constructed. The other 2 gaps each had level 3 to level 10 defenses. This was definitely the main direction of attack. After all, only by attacking the Yellow Spring Pass could they avoid sneaking through. To reach the other 2 gaps, they would have to sneak through, and the cost of sneaking through was not low. One sneak attack costs 9 out of 10 lives. With the defensive lines blocking the gaps, the interior of the Western Wasteland Island would not be struck by the heavenly tribulation. We should be able to see the first batch of ghost nests tonight. He took a deep breath at this moment. The chill in the air gave him a brief moment of clarity. In these 7 days, he had slept less than 12 hours total. He relied entirely on cooling pills to stay alert. Part of his time was spent building the defensive lines. Another part was spent constructing buildings. The remaining time was all used for rapid appraisal. The medical supplies brought by his other vision. Searching for anything that could be put to use. His main focus in appraisal was on building blueprints. He needed time. If he could just hold out for 1 month, 1 year, until he had fully digested all the resources from this batch, he was confident he could launch a counterattack. Time. What he needed most right now was time. Tonight was the first formal assault of the ghost nests on the Yellow Spring Pass. They were launching a full-scale attack on the breeding grounds. Night had deepened. The horizon of the Yellow Spring Pass region began to writhe. At first, it was just the eternal night at the edge of sight, stirring unnaturally. Gradually, a ridge rose up, spanning the sky, a slow advancing arc-shaped blond wall. First came the sound of ghost insects dancing in the air, emitting a series of high-pitched, skin-crawling screeches. Then came the countless ghost beasts charging across the earth. The collective roar of the horde. The regular army had arrived, a pitch-black mass as far as the eye could see. Like a roaring, surging, dark tsunami 100 meters high, the air was thick with an extremely foul stench. Inside a city in the Yellow Spring Pass region, millions of ghost beasts knelt on both knees. Outside the city, the leading ghost Emperor 95, along with a group of trusted followers, knelt on both knees. Gazing at the massive wave of ghost nests charging toward him, he took a deep breath and roared. Ghost Emperor 95 has been attacking the breeding grounds defenses for a long time. Now that the ghost tribe has descended, I am willing to charge and fight for the ghost tribe. The ghost nests split apart from the middle. A fissure passed over them, dividing into 2 streams of ghost nests. They charged straight toward the breeding grounds Yellow Spring Pass defense line No. 1. Countless noises and shadows instantly engulfed them, as if falling into the deep sea. After an unknown amount of time, a small, gaunt ghost creature standing on the web between ghost emperors looked down at the kneeling ghost Emperor 95. A flicker of contempt flashed in its eyes. Ghost tribe? The ghost tribe died long ago. What you see now is the Imperial tribe. Imperial tribe? Ghost Emperor 95, kneeling on the ground, was momentarily stunned. He didn't know. No one had told him. But he snapped back to reality instantly. Ghost Emperor 95 is willing to charge and fight for the Imperial tribe. Bark 3 times like a dog. Whiff whiff whiff. Ghost Emperor 95, without a shred of shame, knelt on the ground and barked 3 times like a dog. Afraid the other party might not be satisfied, he added 3 more barks. Interesting, interesting. Truly interesting. The small, gaunt ghost creature standing on the giant Ghost Emperor's shoulder couldn't stop laughing. It clapped its hands. Make those kneeling beside you bark too. Let me hear it. Whiff 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 whiff. Dub barks rose and fell in succession. Not bad, but I don't like old dogs. The next moment, a gray-white beam of light suddenly shot out from between the fingers of this small, gaunt ghost creature. It instantly engulfed the old ghost. Kneeling behind Ghost Emperor 95, that ancient, aged ghost had its chest pierced through almost instantly. Its life force rapidly drained away. The old ghost kneeling on the ground still kept his mouth in a shape as if holding something. He looked down at his chest, at the thick liquid rapidly draining away, as if he reached out in resignation and grabbed Ghost 195 close. Big King. I'm going first. Here, don't act rashly. Live. Survive. You still have to take a wife. You still have to. Before his words faded, the old ghost's eyes began to glaze over. His right hand, clutching Ghost 195, gradually lost strength and slipped away. He collapsed onto the wasteland. Ghost 195, still kneeling on the ground, turned his head stiffly to look back at this scene. There was a lot of noise around him, but at that moment, it was as if he gradually couldn't hear anything. Scenes from the past replayed before his eyes. The king is truly formidable. You've become a ghost emperor. Great king, what do you think of the name 95? In human culture, 95 is an extremely noble meaning. Great king, by no means should we attack the breeding defense line now. Great king. Ha. Hey, is that abandoned old dog making you this sad? In a daze, he heard the clamorous sounds around him again. Among them was a harsh, mocking voice. Ghost Emperor 95, kneeling on the ground, turned his head to look, not far away, at the one standing on the shoulder of another ghost emperor. His eyes filled with a jeering smile. Staring at him, a thin, small ghost slowly rose to his feet. His massive body was extremely conspicuous in the ghost nest. He patted the dust off his knees, picked up the heavy blade from the ground beside him. Hard to kill me? My name isn't Hey. The next moment, a monstrous ghostly aura erupted like a tidal wave, instantly exploding from within his colossal body. A great cloud of dust burst into the air. Then, Ghost Emperor 95 shot out from the dust cloud, raising the heavy blade high with both hands. He roared, "My name is 95. Ghost Emperor 95 had never fought with his life on the line. Whether it was attacking the front lines that day, or sneaking into the breeding grounds, he had never gone all out. Good enough is good enough. He was very afraid of death. He had always dreamed only of life after the war ended. He had never imagined that one day he would have to fight to the death. If you can't win, run. If you can't escape, surrender. That was his motto. But, at the moment the old ghost died, when this strategist, who had accompanied him for so long, was casually killed amidst mockery, he felt, a roar never felt before erupted from his chest, burning fiercely. The heavy blade came crashing down on that thin, small ghost. The ghost emperor beneath it was cleaved in two. He had never unleashed his true strength, but that didn't mean he was weak. It was just that the thin, small ghost was now standing amidst a cloud of blood mist, holding up the heavy blade with a single finger above his head, a hint of a mocking smile in his eyes. Is the big brother angry? However, the anger of the weak is truly laughable. Ghost Emperor 95, his eyes reddened, looked down at the ground, at that thin, small ghost, who had stopped his heavy blade with just one finger. Big fish, if I asked you to leave Fan Yu, he realized he was quite a failure. He had achieved nothing in this life, but it was still okay. At least he had lived a pastoral life for a year. He turned his head to look not far away, at the fields he had painstakingly cultivated over the past year, now being ravaged and trampled by countless ghost nests. He felt that he should do one thing in this life. He would make this little wretch accompany the old ghost in death. The heavy blade in his hand suddenly flipped, tossing the thin, small ghost on the ground into the air. With lightning speed, he swallowed it whole into his stomach. Only then did he take a deep breath. His voice resounded across heaven and earth. Chen Fan. I am Ghost Emperor 95. Aim that attack of yours here. There's a big shot here. I'll help you trap him. Give me the blast. I want him to fall with me. As soon as the words fell, Ghost Emperor 95 suddenly collapsed in excruciating abdominal pain. His body curled up on the ground, both hands clutching his stomach tightly. He let out a heart-wrenching roar, shouting, "Blast them to hell. I want him to die with me." Blood surged more and more from his abdomen. The excruciating pain made him struggle violently. Not far away, the group of ghost nests that had been kneeling on the ground had already risen, and at the forefront, Ghost Yellow 95, trusting lightly, looked down at the old ghost. With a low growl, he began to run. He charged onto Ghost Yellow 95 body, pinning Ghost Yellow 95 beneath him. More and more ghost nests began to charge, holding Ghost Yellow 95 firmly down. Looking from afar, one could only see a massive mound of flesh, a meat mass formed by tens of thousands of ghost creatures, and it was still growing. Haha, through the gaps, the Ghost Yellow 95 at the very bottom saw three cold white light pillars tearing across the sky, feeling the life within him slowly fade. He muttered with some satisfaction, "No more shaving. Brother, wait for me down below. I didn't get you a wife, but I brought you something good." The next moment, a massive explosion resounded. Countless fragments of ghost houses flew through the air in the Yellow Spring Pass. The three heavenly pillars turned into wine vats, blanketing Yellow Spring City. Repeated strikes. No, that skinny little ghost house was annihilated in a despairing scream. Ghost Yellow 9, Marshal King. But this scene did not affect the ghost nests as a whole. Wave after wave of ghost tides, carrying a sky-filling stench, charged irresistibly toward the breeding Yellow Spring Pass. No one defense line. This would be the largest ghost nest breeding had ever encountered. Ghost Yellow 95 was dead. The sky-filling ghost nest surged through the Yellow Spring Pass, still sweeping across the entire land like a tidal wave. No one cared about Ghost Yellow's death, and after 95 died, that enormous illusory black tortoise slowly dissipated, turning into white specks that vanished completely between heaven and earth. Quiet, quiet, you jeer, quiet. Standing in person on the wall of the breeding Yellow Spring Pass. No one defense line. Chen Fan stared expressionlessly at the surging ghost nest in the distance. The next moment, the 27-kilometer-long Yellow Spring Pass defense line, the patterns on the 27,000 Shikigami cannons, standing atop it, were lit up as if by a miracle. 27,000 Shikigami cannons ignited instantly under the copper barrels, beginning to roar within the narrow valley mouth, unleashing relentless bombardment at any cost. The entire world trembled. Star-red cannon shells, like locusts, were hurled high into the air, dyeing the entire battlefield red. They even drowned the ghost nests, rewriting the very color of this world. Boom, 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 the ground shook wildly. Countless blood-red serpents writhed within the ghost nests, each time claiming the lives of several ghost creatures. Though Chen Fan said not a word, his hand still couldn't help but press tightly against the parapet, his eyes fixed straight ahead on the ghost nest. Looking out, the 27-kilometer-long breeding Yellow Spring Pass. No one defense line was neatly shrouded in a new red glow. Looking down from high above, the new red defense line had become the last beam of light on the eternal night continent. Come on, Chen Fan murmured on the city wall, gazing at the ghost nest being rapidly slaughtered. The ghost nest was swiftly slaughtered. He knew this was only the beginning. The ghost nest's assault would not stop here, though the number of ghost nests was immense now. Before they could even charge to the foot of the wall, they were engulfed by the sky-filling star-red shells. As long as there was enough ghost stone, the Shikigami cannons would never cease fire and the ghost nests would never reach the wall, not even touch the defense line. The great battle was about to erupt. The great battle was about to erupt. Such firepower was undoubtedly a nightmare for the ghost nests, but he did not grow complacent. He was waiting for the ghost nest's next move, especially after the halo covered them. The overall strength of the ghost nest would undergo a qualitative change. He knew this was just the ghost cleanse probing attack. All the ghost stones from the ghost houses killed before the defense line, treasure blueprints, and such, would be wrapped in a faint white light, float in the air, shooting rapidly toward the rear of the line, falling into a warehouse. Behind the defense line, 27 buildings shaped like sculptures. A faint white light is emanating. Structure name: corrosion sculpture. Building grade: blue. Building level: blue. Level 10 structure effect: can automatically absorb ghost stones. All ghost stones dropped by ghost houses within the brush range, medical insurance, etc. but must be killed by ghost houses. It is killed by the city defense buildings within the camp. Max level effect: corrosion is fleeting. This building can be placed in an external warehouse. Automatically collects. Adding to this effect, it's all mine. The pickup process cannot be interrupted or blocked. Chen Fan looked toward the defense line. The 27 corrosion sculptures behind it. These 7 days, a vast amount of resources from the Eternal Night continent converged on the western wasteland island. In the past, every building, the bottom of the barrel building blueprints that could not be comprehended, were all sent to the nursery in the wake of the Great Calamity. Everyone's hope rested on Chen Fan's move. The only heavenly Dao architect of the Yaonai continent, Jiangbei nurtures, protecting all. These past days, part of his time was spent quickly reviewing the blueprints of Edge Castle. Those that could be used were rapidly deployed to the front lines. For example, this corrosion sculpture was one of them, and the most important among them was the Azure Dragon Cannon. Building name: Azure Dragon Cannon. Building grade: blue. Building level: Level 10. Building Effect, City Defense Building. Night Gathering Effect. One of the 4 divine cannons of Azure Dragon County. Forging all 4 divine cannons simultaneously allows fusion into the Heavenly Dao Cannon. Heavenly Dao Blessing Effect. Azure Dragon Domain. Enemies struck by the Azure Dragon Cannon will all experience excruciating pain. T is Bull. Even if an enemy struck by the Azure Dragon Cannon does not die on the spot, all healing effects will be nullified. He has already sent people to the new continent. He wants to test whether the absolute death of the Azure Dragon Cannon can kill those immortal ghost creatures lurking in the sea region. Still missing a Vermilion Bird Cannon. Just need to find this Vermilion Bird Cannon to obtain the Heavenly Dao Cannon. The Heavenly Dao Cannon is definitely one of his greatest aids. Young master, right at this moment, the lame monkey beside him, with urgency, carried 2 large crates and quickly ascended the city wall. Inside were spread out sheets of blueprints. Chen Fan nodded lightly. Edge picked up the blueprints and began to examine them. He was like a human machine, rapidly flipping through the blueprints in his hands. The blueprints he had seen these past days, the highest grade was merely blue or white. Green, yellow, blue was the ceiling. But the Heavenly Dao Cannon was a purple grade building. He needed one purple grade building to hold the scene. At this moment, the building blueprint he most wanted to see was the Vermilion Bird Cannon. But one after another. Still, the Vermilion Bird Cannon blueprint was nowhere to be seen. Soon, several large crates of blueprints were all appraised. Still, no blueprint for the Vermilion Bird Cannon was found. Could it be, the blueprint for the Vermilion Bird Cannon is not on the Eternal Night continent? Chen Fan stood at the edge of the city wall, looking toward the defense line. Countless ghost tides, charging through the artillery fire, in a death charge, surged toward him. Dawn gradually broke. Eternal Night has receded at the Yellow Spring mouth.